How do these stupid people get to control your money?
Don, Wade, and Roma. Mornings 5 till 9, 890 a.m. WLS. Now, Rowe and Roper.
Well, I'm Congressman Peter Roskam in for Rowe and Roper. And we've been in the middle of a very interesting conversation with two individuals who have a front row seat, way beyond a front row seat, actually, are in the arena on incredible change that's going on in the United States, and that is Congressman-elect Joe Walsh and Congressman-elect Bobby Schilling. So here's the question. You were part of a historic class, obviously, and you are part of a historic class. You have yet to be sworn in, but you've taken some action sort of on the official side of things, and that is you've met as a group, you've been through orientation. Your class has over 80 new members, and by contrast, I came in a class in 2006, which was the smallest Republican class since the House of Representatives went to 435. We had 13 members, right? Wow. And we could have fit on a little Gilligan's Island cruise boat and plenty of room to spare. But yours was just this massive group. So you come in from all different parts of the country. You largely don't know one another, right? Because you're interacting for the first time and meeting one another. What was that first series of meetings like, and what do you do as a class, as a group together, and how do you interact with the leadership and all of that sort of stuff? Bobby, what do you think?
You know, it was, first off, the whole week was very humbling to have the honor to go and be actually elected. But, you know, it was so awesome because, I mean, we've got, you know, between loggers and doctors, just a lot of small business folks that jumped into the arena for the first time in their lives. But it was just a very interesting week because a lot of the folks there, when we would sit down and visit, you know, we're all on the same page when it comes to the out-of-control spending, you know, tax cuts, you know, everything across the board, and just meeting. And there were a lot of folks that I did not have the opportunity to sit down with and talk with. So I'm looking forward to reaching out to those folks when I get back. But it was a very humbling experience the whole week.
Joe, how about you?
Man, you walk away thinking this is the most diverse country in the world. When you look at these 80, and we've all got our different accents, everybody does something.
They've got accents.
They've got accents.
We don't have accents.
Chicago,
right.
We don't. Everybody does something different for a living. Income levels across the map. It is a real cross section of America. My wife said it's like a bunch of real folks were elected to Congress. And it was exciting getting to know them. In many ways, Peter, you know, you've been through this. It's like, you know, freshman orientation in college. Mm-hmm. You're kind of watching everybody scooting for everybody's elbowing each other and getting some positioning in. And some of that stuff plays out. But at the end of the day, I was struck by this notion of, I think we all had, if we all stick together on things, we're a heck of a big block. Yeah. We can influence what our conference does and what the House does if we all stick together. Easier said than done.
No, actually, I don't. I think it is. I think that there is kind of a natural cohesion that has come out of this group and this election because most of us were talking about these same themes, right? I mean, it was that jarring sense of, hey, these people aren't reading these bills. They're moving an agenda that the country didn't sign up for in 2008, and there's an expectation that this ship needs to be put right and put in a different direction. And, you know, other people have said this before. It's not an original Peter Roskam thought, but that our country is at a real tipping point or a time of real choosing. And if we continue on this pathway that we're on, it's going to mean you're basically on a European social style model. And you get to the point where you can't pull back from spending, and it gets so entrenched that you're basically limiting economic growth and so forth. But the alternative is pull back from that and move in a different direction, and I think that's what this election was all about. Okay, so when you get together, do you elect officers? Do you interact with one another? What are the positions that people were competing for? How does all that work on the inside?
Yeah, we we elect a steering committee, and then we have some leaders that get elected. It was interesting because I didn't want to become a leader. I just wanted to kind of sit back and watch everything and then kind of see how things were going. And like Joe was saying, you kind of seen some elbowing. It was actually kind of interesting because you got to see how the process works. And, some people would come up to you. And Todd Rokita, love the guy, great.
Indiana.
Yep, Indiana, Secretary of State. But he says, hey, you mind doing some whipping for me? And I said, sure, because I like the guy and I know where he stands. And I went out and I talked to other folks out there. And
what does that mean? Explain what somebody means when you say whipping for him.
Just going out and saying, hey, Todd's running. He helped me out with my race. He's a great guy. He's a family man, Secretary of State. Just kind of give some background details on how what an asset he is to our freshman class, and then people take it from there.
The inside, Joe, on the leadership stuff, how did that work? What did you perceive?
Well, I think we all realized from the beginning that because we were so large, perhaps we had more leverage with current Republican leadership. So we debated a lot about how to demonstrate that. Do we try to shoot for an extra freshman member on the steering committee, an extra person in leadership, things like that? It was an interesting debate because we respect our Republicans that are in Congress and the current leadership, and we were very cognizant of the fact that, boy, the media was looking to find any divisions they could find. So we wanted to be sure to walk out of any room we were in with real cohesion and real public support for Congressman Boehner and everyone associated with leadership so that we are all on the same page.
Yeah, I'm telling you, from most Republicans who have been out there for the past 4 years in the minority, we felt like Frodo in the valley, and you all were Gandalf coming over with the white horse. Like, hey, great. Come on. Oh, here we go. It's very, very just this tremendous feeling. And when you all were introduced one by one by one by one, and you walked up in different delegations, and there were 5 new members of the House of Representatives from Illinois, it was this incredible feeling. I was sitting with John Shimkus and some of the other Illinois folks, and we just were delighted to see you coming across the front like that. It's just amazing.
Peter, that's a big deal, and I know Bobby feels this way too. The president's home state. We really had a clean federal sweep.
Right.
Senator Mark Kirk, 5 new Republican congressmen. I felt like we helped put Illinois on the map a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it'll have a restraining influence, and over a period of time, we're going to reflect back and we're going to say some good stuff happened in November of 2010. All right, let's take a call. Let's go to Don in Bloomingdale. Hey, Don, you're on with the 2 new congressmen. What do you got for them?
Hello, gentlemen, and congratulations on all your victories. It's like a breath of fresh air hearing these 2 gentlemen talk the way they are. It's exactly what I've been looking for since I got involved politically 7 years ago when my son joined the military. He's a Marine, and I needed to be involved. But I just pray and hope that Washington doesn't change you guys, that in a year from now you're still talking the same way. If anything you could take from this election, all 3 of you, is this. The American people are involved in politics now like a sport. I don't think that's going to change, and I think the things that we're calling for is seeing you guys not go there with the sole purpose of becoming career politicians. That thought just despises me. I want to see people serve. I'd like to see that gentleman go back to making pizza someday. Go to serve, do your job, and then let somebody else do the same. I think there's too many guys that have been there too long. The other thing I'd like to say is, Congressman Roskam, would you be willing to say that from here on out, any bill that comes down the pike in Washington, or all you guys, would you be willing to put it to the constitutionality test before you're even voting?
Yeah, Don, absolutely. That's one of the things that we put together in the Pledge to America that was a result of this whole America Speaking Out effort that I was involved in. And one of the components of the Pledge to America is a commitment to cite the portion of the Constitution that you're relying on if you're proposing a piece of legislation. And I think that's going to have an impact to bring the Constitution sort of front and center in our national life. Sometimes, the Constitution, there's some people who've never read the Constitution, for example, or they haven't read it since the 8th grade or whatever. But the Constitution is a foundation upon upon which our nation was built, and it is a foundation that we need to go to again and again and again. And I think you're going to see that. I know I'm speaking for Joe and for Bobby, and I think for every other Republican. But thanks, Don. Thanks for your question, and you're my constituent in Bloomingdale. Don't move away, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, man. So if you want to join in and ask a question to the new Congressman-elect, 312-591-8900. And we'd love to hear from you. As you're looking out over the landscape, how do you intend to interact with the districts that you represent? So you've each been entrusted with the voice of trying to be the voice of about 700,000 people. And you've now been entrusted, and you're going to take the oath of office into an institution that is as old as the Constitution itself. In the history of our country, fewer than 12,000 people have actually served in the United States House of Representatives. And in a nation of 300 million people, you're one of 435 that's going to be in the room. Okay, so how do you go back and interact, and to speak to Don's? The subtext of what Don's saying is, how do we make sure that you all, me, everybody doesn't become a head case and become, we've seen that drama unfold with other members in the past, and it's just that happens sometimes. What kind of things do you have set up that is going to be a restraining influence, keep you honest? You know what I mean? Just all those types of things. How do you stay grounded in this process?
For me, Peter, is my beautiful wife, Christy, and those kids will definitely keep me grounded. But, I think that the thing that I always have in my head, and I agree so much with what Don had to say, but, sometimes what happens is we get away from reality. And I think the way you stay in check is you never, ever forget where you come from, and you get out there and you stay amongst the people. And I plan on doing that every weekend. I'm going to be out there, and I'll be bringing my family with me on some of the occasions because they're engaged also, and this is about them. This is about those future generations. But I think those are just a few of the things. Just stay active with the people through email, letters, phone calls, and I call it the final 3 feet, visiting with folks.
That's good. Joe?
A woman about halfway through the campaign sent me a text or an email and said the problem with Melissa Bean is she became a congresswoman and she stopped becoming a representative. And Bobby's right. The only concrete way you can avoid that is to get your butt home as often as you can. I'm going to sleep in my office. I want to be home all the time. I want to hold town halls all the time. I want to be in front of my constituents all the time. You need to do that. Too often we send people to Washington. They end up staying there for too long, and it's like they become a different creature. Term limits may be the answer for some. I don't know. You've got to stay in touch with the people in your district, because at the end of the day, you're their voice.
It's interesting. What you will find, I think, is that Washington is a real echo chamber, right? And you'll go out there. Everybody is basically reading the same things, watching the same things, and there will be some interesting, charming people, and there's some non-interesting, non-charming people. But you will find over a period of time that I think what you need to do is develop a discipline where you break out of the echo chamber. And those things that you just mentioned, those areas of those town hall meetings, we saw what happened when the majority decided they were not interested in town halls anymore, right? And those were the stories where people were, they were being chastised in these town halls, and nobody likes that. So rather than having that experience, they said, well, I'm just not going to have these meetings. Yeah. And so I think that there is, my experience has been if you remain open to hearing from people, and that's not to say that you don't know what your philosophy is. You're both conservative guys, and you know the way you look at the world, and you have a political philosophy. But within that philosophy, there's sort of a bandwidth, isn't there, of an ability to approach different things. And it's like, well, hey, man, I don't know. I didn't think that up. That's a good idea. Let's pursue that. And that's based on the suggestions of constituents. One of the guys that you're going to enjoy serving with is Jeff Davis, who's a congressman from Kentucky. This idea of restraining the federal bureaucracy and making the federal agencies have an up or down vote in Congress on any high-impact rule that they propose came out of a meeting with a constituent that said, hey,